So first, I'm happy to be back. I was here last year, and I've traveled the world over the past year attending many, many events, and this event was my favorite of last year. Content was fantastic. Even though I don't ski or snowboard, the location is beautiful. I enjoy the mountains. Being from Texas, it's a very different type of scenery that I see, so enjoying that. So what I'm going to do today is talk a bit about our program at Elastic. So I'm CISO at Elastic, Mandy Andress, and I've been at Elastic for 7 years. And through that time, came in and had a very strategic approach to how we wanted to build the program and have seen some pretty interesting results from how we approach that. So just wanted to talk through from the very beginning of how we thought about building out the program to how we're operating today, to some of the things that we're looking forward to doing in the future with AI and other types of approaches from a technical perspective. This will be more high level, it's not greatly technical, and also I will talk about Elastic products in the context of how we use them. You can replace them with any other type of product you want to. I just want to make sure it's clear we're not here pressing and presenting and pushing Elastic's products on its own. So prior to, my whole career has been in information security, cybersecurity, information risk. I've been in a Fortune 100 financial services firm, published a book, Surviving Security. I also serve as an investor and advisor to a number of security startups. So I live and breathe and really enjoy the world of security. So going into Elastic and really having a green field to build out a security program was exciting. So all of those challenges, all of those lessons learned, where I always said, hey, if I could do this again, I would apply this and do this differently. I got to apply them. And doing so in a very different context, which I'll talk about in a minute. So when I walked in the first day, my boss at the time gave me 3 priorities. 2 were immediate, and 3rd was more, this is how we wanted to approach the program. 1, build a strategic security program. They had a few analysts that were working on security activities, but did not have an overall strategic security program, and also had a lot of tension between the security team and engineering and the rest of the organization. So one, to figure out why that was happening and to address it. 2nd, get a SOC 2. They had been trying to work through a SOC 2 process for a little over a year and hadn't been successful yet, so wanted to get that as a start to all of the customer-requested compliance certifications. And then using the Elastic technology, and so coming in and how to run and how to potentially run a security program using kind of data stores and data-driven security approaches. So with that, coming from financial services and a heavily regulated, compliance-driven environment where risk is kind of on top of it, wanted to move much more into a risk-driven security program where compliance is the byproduct. And so that was the foundation to how we think about everything that we are doing. And just from ISACA, a high-level kind of risk-based prioritization process. And this is what we look and how we try to, when we're looking at priorities, we're looking at budgeting, we're looking at any decision that we're making, we try to keep this risk-based approach in mind. So going in, laid out a journey that we were going to run through and expand upon over the foreseeable horizon. First was getting the foundation security capabilities, your general controls, all the security practices that an organization should have in place. And that took us a couple of years. And then moved into how do we integrate all of this that we've built? How do we automate it? How do we start to make informed decisions, risk-based decisions, and look at how do we then continue to expand and move more into an analytics and AI with behavior analytics, and then vision, trying to get to dynamic defenses. So right now, in some areas, we're in the ecosystem optimization areas, some areas we're in the behavior analytics, and they go back and forth as technology changes, the business has evolved. I talked that I've been in Elastic 7 years, and there's about 3 iterations of the company that have existed in my time there. So we're always changing and evolving as everything around us is changing. So also looking at what's the purpose and focus and mission of the InfoSec team at Elastic. I look at the day-to-day InfoSec function more on the second layer, if you're familiar with the 3 lines of defense model that's heavily used in financial services, and that we have teams that are the day-to-day operations, hands-on, think IT operations teams, SRE teams in a cloud context. They're the ones that are implementing all of the controls and all of the security practices. And then the InfoSec team is that second line. It's the monitoring, it's the governance, it's setting the policies, it's working with all the groups across the organization. And that third level is internal audit, external audit, kind of independent organizations that can provide you insights. So that's how we thought about the foundation framing of the program. And then looking more at how did we want to behave and how did we want to act. So Elastic as a company has published its source code, which is out on the Elastic site if you're interested, which are the kind of the white hive, honeycomb areas around it. And those are the principles of how we want to behave as elasticians on a daily basis. And so we took that and brought it down one more level to how do we day-to-day want to apply that into an Elastic InfoSec operating philosophy. And so a couple things I want to highlight that are very different from other security teams that I have worked in. One is number 6, unexpected transparency. Certainly in organizations I've been in the past, it's security is a black box. It's behind this locked, closed door. We can't tell you anything that's going on. And there's very little that we need to fundamentally hide and not disclose or not share. Sometimes we need to adjust and remove some specifics from the data. But the approach that we took is we share everything we possibly can. And that helps really build awareness. It helps teams understand the why. It helps them feel part of the program and part of the processes. Another, number 2, deliberate resilience. One of the things that we focused on, knowing that as we're early users of Elasticsearch and the products, that we would be running build candidates. We would be running release candidates. We knew we would break things. And so we architected and built our infrastructure and our environments to be able to completely blow up our environments, rebuild it within a few hours, if not less than that, and not lose any data, whether it's logging and session information from security detection or any of our other tools. And we accidentally tested this one time, and we accidentally deleted our entire environment. And it went up and running, fully up and running in 2 hours with no data loss. So they did what we asked. But that was a challenge for folks coming into the team because all of their roles before, like, oh, no downtime, we want to make sure it's running all the time. And it was really, really hard for them to change their mindset and be comfortable with the fact that, yeah, we're going to break things. And we're doing that purposefully. We just want to make sure that we're building them back up. And slightly different from the chaos monkey approach of injecting fault things. This is really focusing on, we know things are going to break. And so we continue to focus on operating kind of day-to-day this way and kind of how that all falls into our function. So as with many of you, our program is based on the NIST cybersecurity framework. So that's when we do external benchmark assessments. That's what we're benchmarking ourselves against. So Elastic is a company. We're currently at 3,400 employees. We operate in a distributed fashion, 35 countries. We don't have any infrastructure of our own. All of our enterprise services are SaaS. All of our customer cloud SaaS runs on hyperscalers. So AWS, Azure, GCP are the ones that we maintain. And globally distributed, fully remote. If folks are going into an office, it's a co-working space. We don't have Elastic-owned infrastructure that we're managing from a traditional office perspective. And a bit on sizing, from a security data perspective, we're ingesting about 150 terabytes of data a day from our security detection and monitoring. About 600 gigabytes of that is from endpoint data, and upwards of 450,000, I think that number is probably well over 500,000 now, endpoints. And that count includes all of the containers that are running across our cloud environment. So from a scaling perspective, we have some significant scale. So when we combined all of those foundations and philosophies and frameworks, we landed on this general structure. And we talk about it as a distributed federated approach. Distributed in that want to keep the work closest to where the day-to-day security decisions are happening. And that's where the day-to-day operations. So everyone across the company does have a very clear role to play in security. And then we have federated in that there are groups and programs that work across the enterprise, and that's our governance and assurance, risk management, policy standards, all the typical functions that you would have in a security program. Just for some context, this is the current team size. It's about 43 folks. We'll be about 50 in the next 12 months with our hiring plan. But have 4 key functions. Customer trust is all the compliance certifications, due diligence questionnaires, Paramify, where are you? Thank you, you help us significantly on all of our FedRAMP stuff. Security assurance is our core security architecture, governance, control implementation, detection response standard, SOC. And then product security is secure lifecycle development, tools, working closely with the engineering teams. They run our bug bounty program. They run our third party, whether it's pen testing, red team, code reviews. And all of those functions work together and work across the entire organization. So now getting into more current times, we focus on 3 core objectives for what we want to do as an InfoSec team. First and foremost is keeping Elastic secure. These are the current objectives that we have under that component. Second is customer trust at scale, as Elastic has continued to grow, expand, be used within critical business processes, revenue-driving processes for our customers, and requirements, regulations, a lot of government, public sector. So there's a lot of activities and a lot of things we need to do and show to our customers to help build that trust. And then lastly, be customer zero, whether that's running our own security solutions or building new functionality that makes it into the product, or just using Elasticsearch as a data store and running components of our program with that as a data store and building around it. And I'll go into detail on how some of those have been working for us. So going a bit into how we overall approach the more technical processes, or at least the components. First and foremost, one of our principles that we have tried to evolve to over the last couple of years is that everything is code. And so we did policy as code, and we've done controls as code. So what we did was we took, of course, all of the certifications and what everyone does, create a single controls framework that aligns with everything that we need to follow and need to adhere to. We put all of that into GitHub and then pull it into Elasticsearch as a core controls framework. And what that allows us to do is then use that data as a foundation to tie all of our controls to a lot of different data points and different tools that we have feeding into other areas of Elasticsearch. And what that then gives us is the ability to tie all of our controls or insights directly to a specific control number, and then we can tie that up to control frameworks. So from an audit perspective, we have a complete drill down of what we're doing in the organization to adhere to that control, all driven as compliance as code. One thing we built was an asset inventory. We didn't have that. We built one for the organization within Elasticsearch. We have a blog post out there on how we did that and the schema that we used. And that, of course, first thing in security, first thing in OWASP, understand your assets, understand your environment. So needing to pull in all of the information and doing so in a way that we could continue to tie all of the pieces together. And so the asset that feeds into our continuous controls monitoring, it feeds into our security detection and monitoring, knowing who owns what and where we need to go contact them. And the second key piece, so you get the controls and the assets that we built out. Another thing we've been spending a lot of time on lately is, as a company that has all of our source code public as open source, now back to open source company, many of our customers take our code and run their own security scanners against it and happily send us reports of thousands of findings and wanting us to address all of them. And usually scanners aren't configured quite right, so many of them are false positives, but they don't like us to tell them that they're false positives. And so we created a solution, and now we did, 6 months ago, we integrated into an LLM, and I don't think I added that in here. So now we scan all that, get the output, feed into an LLM to make these statements that we share with our customers. So in a much more automated fashion. It used to be extremely manual. And it's going to be addressed in this version. We review, yes, it's critical, we reviewed it, we're not vulnerable to it. We consider it low risk, and we're going to update it in X version, just to give those insights and those updates. And this was something that started taking a tremendous amount of time as customers really started focusing on vulnerabilities. And we did this as a stopgap. Our customer support team now has access to it, so they can answer directly. They don't need to rely on us. And they're also going to be making it public, so customers can search it as well. And long term, the focus is kind of API-based, so they can pull it all down and tie it all together themselves. But that was just a stopgap, because the core is we wanted to move to, we were getting more and more requests from customers for zero CVEs. One of the key things that we were running into were our container images. We weren't updating all of the kind of base OS of the container images either as frequently as customers wanted us to, or when all the kind of container images came out, the initial thought was customers would deploy the containers, they would manage the underlying OS. If they wanted to update it, they would run the respective package manager updates, and off they go. But the customer expectations changed, and they don't want to do any of that. They don't want to touch that. They just want, please give me something that I don't have to worry about. I want to run my scanner, my procurement team, check the box, zero CVEs. And we started getting significant pressure on that from the financial services industry, public sector. And the thing that we did there was we moved to the WLFI distro-less images and used that now as the base of our containers, and had our first zero CVE scan last week, which was fantastic. Never seen that. Never seen that again. I have screenshots. It's fantastic. But I talk a lot about that because it's an area where InfoSec was doing something as a process and an activity, but the underlying root cause needed to be driven by fundamental changes in how engineering was operating and their philosophy. Because their philosophy was, we're not vulnerable to it, we're not going to spend time to fix it. Where customer expectations changed and said, I don't care if you're not vulnerable, I don't want to see it. I don't care if nothing could ever happen in your code base. And that took a lot of conversations. Certainly having revenue pressure helped prioritize that much more quickly than it probably would have in some other organizations. But seeing a tremendous amount of shift in what customers are expecting from their vendors, from their suppliers, and how we need to adjust to that. And this is the area where we've seen the most change. So more core infrastructure vulnerability management. One of the things there, we have a number of different teams, being distributed, being fully remote. We operate as a company in a very decentralized way. And so how do we manage all of those components? And one of the ways that we approach it in InfoSec as well is we want to make the end user's job as easy as possible. If that means there's more work on us, that's perfectly fine. We want processes to work what's best for those that are living in that world day to day. And one of the areas we did this was in kind of traditional vulnerability management. We pull all of the results into kind of vulnerability management index within Elasticsearch, tie it into the asset database, tie it into, bring in some other feeds from NVD and things like that. And we used Times as our automation engine. And what we did then was we worked with every team that needed to receive information. It's like, how do you want to receive this? Some want Jira tickets created, some want GitHub issues created, some want emails, some want things in Slack. And so we're able to create the best process for each team to integrate that into how they operated. And then because we're extrapolating the data from the source, we can add or change anything on the back end without needing to change our downstream processes. And that's something that has been working very well for the various teams. This is also a blog post on the website. Moving into threat management, this is kind of the core of where we are using Elastic's SIEM solution and Elastic's endpoint security solution. But the core of what we do is we try to automate as much as possible. So we have detections as code in GitHub, all of our detections. That gives us the ability to understand what work was done, why that rule exists, and having some context and some descriptions, audit trails and changes. And then one component that the team built was a connector that pulled the detectionist code out of GitHub, put it in JSON format, and pushed it through API into our SIM. So we have no human error from push the button to deploy your new detection rules. There's no human in that process. It's all detectionist code, CI/CD type processing. And we're also able to do that while we are in 35 countries. We have hundreds of different SIM implementations across the globe. For a while, we were having to manually send detection rules to all of those. Now, we also aggregated now in a central core to where we push our rules once and they propagate out across everything around the globe. So what took hours, if not a day, to update detection rules across the infrastructure now takes just a couple of minutes. We are heavy users of Tines. We automate as much as possible, and I'll go into a bit of that. Right now, 97% of the alerts that fire in our SIM are in some way triaged and addressed through automation. And about 3% get to an analyst for investigation. We also built out a malware sandbox. So if you want to detonate any malware, we can do that, and it feeds into the system as well. The key component that helps us get as automated as we are is utilizing distributed alerting. We use Slack for internal communications. So we send messages to users and ask, is this you? Did you do this? Are you sure you want to do this? A couple examples, if someone changes or makes changes to their MFA settings, they get a message, hey, did you mean to do this? If someone shares a file globally, we use Google Workspace. So if someone shares a file that's open to everyone in the world, they get a Slack alert, hey, did you mean to do this? And the ability to just push a button and say, no, I didn't mean to do it, and it automatically revokes those permissions. And we also are continuing to expand what we are using our distributed alerting for, because that's a key driver just in distributed and decentralizing allows us to scale our approaches much more than we could when we were manually following up with everyone. So moving a bit into the future and how we are currently using and planning to use AI into the environment. We have kind of an AI assistant, and also using that for initial alert triage, just get some initial information. Traditionally we were pulling all of the contextual information. We pulled all of the alert, the context into Slack, and the analysts were working out of Slack. We still do that for a backup, but now we pull that all into a kind of co-pilot security assistant and allow them to interact with more natural language conversation around, for those alerts that an analyst does need to investigate, they're able to do that in a much more free-flowing conversation approach. But I'm really excited with that video to get some SOC agents talking together. That would be fantastic. One thing that's extremely simple, but has saved us a tremendous amount of time, is for our threat intelligence team. So they're reading reports every day, figuring out where does it apply to Elastic, where do we need to think about it, where do we need to make some changes, where do we need new detections, adjust our controls. And they started uploading reports into LLMs and getting summaries out of that. And then when they're writing their summaries to help explain to the rest of us things that we need to pay attention to, they're using the LLM summaries. And it's really, really simple, but it has saved upwards of 8 hours per report that the analysts are working through of just kind of what's the core message in here, how do I explain it, and allows them to spend much more time on understanding how does this impact Elastic? Where do we need to implement new control? Where do we need to put in new detections? And it's the thing that the team said, yeah, we're going to do this. I'm like, okay, sounds great. But we were all really surprised with the impact that it had on the time savings for the team. Kind of combining the Slack alerts for events and the security assistant, the team integrated it all into Slack. So now they don't have to go anywhere else. They just happily talk to the assistant in Slack. They can call it from the alert bot that they had created. They're really working to try to tie in as much as possible. How do I introduce, how do I leverage AI into my current workflows to help me either work faster, be more effective, and getting them comfortable. One of the key things from the analysts is, while they hear all about AI, they hear all about, in a SOC certainly is one of the first places in a security team that AI could probably most effective. They're not sure about it. And so giving them a path to evolve and understand how it works, see how it helps them as we continue to move towards, ideally, we'll get to agents and things like that. It's an example of just the security assistant from an alert triage piece. It just puts all the alerts in there, what I just said. So now, more specific future focus areas. So we took some time this past year to step back and look at what are the things that are really painful for us today, and what are the things that are going to continue that we should probably look at? How do we evolve and how do we adjust? First and foremost, increasing scale and complexity, both from a threat, from a geopolitical perspective, from a company perspective, as we are expanding and making more solutions available, expanding our server lines as we had serverless come out. So we have both kind of a stateless and a self-managed offering. So doubling our kind of SaaS responsibilities. And looking at all that against the ever-growing legal and regulatory landscape from whether it's an industry or a country perspective, data sovereignty, EU regulations have created some significant focus points for how do we understand, or how do we best get all the visibility that we need in an aggregated way, but do so in a way that means the data is not leaving its country of origin. And so how do we put all of those pieces together? That's why we have so many kind of globally distributed detection systems. And then pulling all those frameworks together, because sometimes they're conflicting with each other, and how do you balance that? What are the decisions that you make? Messy data, we all know data comes in many different forms, and it's not easy to always integrate and tie together. So a lot of work into whether it's using standardized schemas or putting in automation and to help adjust data to a schema that works for the given process that we're trying to do. There's a lot of work. The more we get into automation, the more we get into AI, the messy data piece becomes more and more critical. We actually just did a pilot for a tool that would help aggregate all of these components. And we stopped it, and we're not able to move forward because we realized we first need to fix a lot of the underlying data. We can't aggregate data that we don't have or data that's wrong. And then as in any organization, there's just things that happen. Suddenly there's a new acquisition that we need to adjust for. There's AI suddenly becomes the big thing and the whole company pivots to an AI focus. People leave, take new opportunities. Lots of little things that over time and in aggregate have an outsized impact. So the team loves to create really long names of things. So this is their most recent addition to that process. So this is one of the key things that we are focused on right now, and it's that aggregation of everything that we're seeing in the environment and getting all of that in one place. It'll drive behavior analytics. It'll drive remediation actions. It'll drive seeing where there's hotspots or pain points and where do we need to focus. It helps in our risk-based analysis. It helps in our prioritization. Right now we have all of that, but it's all siloed. And we can bring it together, but it's very manual and it takes a lot of time. So now we're looking at how do we bring all that together in a much more automated way and then send some AI and such against it and see what happens. Actually, I saw a demo of a new tool at a new startup that was working, and they showed me they had a couple, it was vulnerability management focused, and they had a couple AI agents playing security roles, and they had, the goal was there's a new CVE, what do we need to do in our environment about it? And so there was an admin that was kind of managing the conversation. There was a security manager, security analyst who's like, okay, we need to address this. They call it the annoying security engineer role, whose sole job is just to throw in all the corner cases. Did you think about this? Did you think about this? And just watching them talk back and forth and landing and bringing in all the contextual data about your environment. And at the end of it all, landing on, yes, your environment, for this example, yes, your environment is vulnerable to this, but you have these compensating controls in place that make the ability to exploit that vulnerability very, very low. So yes, you may want to patch, but it doesn't need to be something immediate. And all of that happening in the span of about 30 seconds. Whereas doing that today, manually with conversations, that's hours, if not days, sometimes weeks. One of the things we're working on for threat detection is using automation and AI assistance to pull out threat indicators, push them automatically into detections, into various SIM, into automation. There's a bunch of different ideas the team has. They're right now focusing on the underlying infrastructure to get that ready, but wanting to then, instead of having to comb through a report and pull out all the IOCs, again, feed that report into the LLM, it pulls out the IOCs, it sends it off, and then everything flows through where it needs to go. One of the things that I'm spending a lot of time on with the team and really trying to change their mindset is from a detection perspective. And there's a couple things in the detection space that have me extremely worried about the future in our effectiveness if we don't make these adjustments. One, all of the challenges talked about before, the speed, the scale. There's just so much that's happening so fast. We can't, as humans, keep up with it all. Nor can we anticipate all of the potential things a threat actor could be doing. And so trying to write detection rules in a very explicit way, in trying to anticipate what could happen, or trying to anticipate this is not a behavior I want to see in my environment. It doesn't scale, and it's not going to be effective long-term. We see it all today already with just tons of detection rules in flight, folks not really understanding why they exist or what was the impetus of putting it in the detection rule catalog in the first place. So two approaches that I have the team working towards. One is foundation behavior analytics. First speaker mentioned it, just understanding how does something behave in the environment, whether it's a user, an account, a device, a workload, an API key, having that aggregate visibility of how is everything interacting, and then getting alerts when there's something anomalous about that behavior. And not just from a detection perspective does it change, but it also will completely change your investigation and response because you don't know intent, you don't know the why. So that change could be a new process that went in place that wasn't fully communicated and we didn't know about and didn't know to watch for it. It could be an operational issue, could be a hardware issue, could be a human error. So we don't know necessarily in our current organization setups which team would follow up on the action. And so seeing a lot of this as companies are looking at this more and more and starting to have those conversations of their kind of security monitoring and their observability teams, do they collapse? How do we work together? We're both monitoring, we're both using the same data. How do we do that in a much more efficient way? So first and foremost is the kind of underlying behavior analytics. What's happening in our environment where we're seeing changes? And then I've always been a big fan of canary detections and using less kind of traditional rules within your detection rules within your SIM and focusing more on canaries, the things that you know that if this gets triggered, it is absolutely 100% something you need to go investigate and look into because this never should be accessed, this never should be used. And so you're not trying to infer from activity that it's happened. You know specifically that, yep, that's there, should never be touched. And doing that in a way just helps eliminate false positives, helps analysts prioritize and know where to spend their time. And so we've started doing this and storing, we do a lot with API keys, do a lot because we're with cloud, so whether it's Okta accounts and configurations or things across our hyperscalers. And the team was very skeptical at first when we were starting to do this, but they have started to come around and started to see the value as we've kind of through some red team exercises, they've seen the value when these things get tripped and they know where to investigate and catching red teams quickly. I talked backwards, already talked about the behaviors. And overall, the kind of fundamental way that we're looking at the future is data. Data continues to be the core component of anything for security. And doing that at scale, AI is certainly a significant technology that will help us do that better. It will help us scale. It will help us see insights that we're not able to see today, in addition to changes in threat activity. Touching a bit on Bryce's comments, defenders, I think there will be a tremendous amount of improvement that defenders can see. They'll be able to identify behaviors and patterns that they can't see today in data, be able to take action much faster, just in the few examples that we've seen in some of the basic process changes we've tried. We've seen significant and outsized impacts from a speed perspective. And then stronger, the ability to pull in contextual information from your environment, the ability to then be able to analyze in ways that we can't do today, those configurations, those trails, and seeing kind of hidden admin access privileges through inheritance of groups and roles, or pulling in the configurations and being able to chart the path through 5 different layers to realize that, yeah, these 5 layers aren't actually working the way we think they're working. And doing that in a real-time, always analyzing time, whereas today we do a lot of that just in red team exercises, and it's more of a point in time. But of course, threat actors are using it today. But I do feel that defenders will be the ones ahead in the future as we learn to apply and leverage all of the advances that AI can bring into the security space. The key thing for me is that contextual information and that speed of analysis. The things that we're able to see and learn from an AI versus a human doing it are transformative. And I don't know how many have looked at the most recent CrowdStrike threat report that came out, but there was one event that they responded to where the time from kind of initial access to exfiltration was 51 seconds. Yet it still took 200 plus days for companies to realize that they were impacted. We've got to lessen that. And AI, for me, is the only way I see that we're going to be able to do that. And no, I do not want to update Adobe. Yes, exactly. And then for me, my vision that we've talked about in the past, we thought SOAR was really going to help us get there. I do think self-defending environments, ability to self-config, make changes, adapt in real time automatically, while it's a ways away, I'm seeing kind of the real components that will allow us to build and get to that in time. So I'm really excited about the future. And with that, thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Is Times self-hosted for you guys, or is it just SaaS that you guys are using?
We're doing self-hosted because of FedRAMP.
Love that.
Yes?
How much of your teams are spending doing threat hunting versus reactive work? And have you seen them leverage AI for their threat hunting activity?
So they're about, the way we have the team split, we have a team of detection engineers and a team of response analysts. And the detection engineering team is doing the detection, traditional rule engineering, and they're the ones doing the threat hunting, and the analysts are the reactive. And we try to keep it separate to avoid the always just being in the reactive mode. Do find that the detection engineering team is doing less and less on the threat hunting side because they're still trying to apply that approach of, oh, my threat intelligence team told me about this new thing that's coming out, and I now need to create detection rules around it, instead of how do we look at either behaviors, canaries, or a more efficient way, whether that's using AI. First thing we're trying to get them to do is just leverage AI, LLMs, just to help create an initial draft of a detection rule, and just starting to get them comfortable there. Have some really strong detection engineers, but they come from a very traditional background and are very, very hesitant to start using AI.
I saw a little query where it said, hey, did you do this action, yes or no? What happens when
there's no answer?
When there's no answer, it gets immediately flagged to an analyst for investigation. Yes. Well, thank you very much. I'm around if anyone has any questions later.